once you've got your work completely sodden, can you see, I just go over it all, pressing, making sure that you kind of spread the water as you go. Sometimes it bubbles up like that and it looks like it's not wet, but it actually is. I found my olive oil soap. Beautiful, beautiful soap. So with one hand, it's really, really good for all skin conditions, especially if you have eczema. There was one man I remember doing a festival with, and it was a big arts festival, and we had thousands of people coming up to the stall and having a go for free. And I used this soap, and this guy came up to me and he says, "My God," he said, "what are you using?" He said, "That is the first time I've ever had soap on me, because normally I come out in a rash." So it's brilliant stuff. It's made with olive oil, and yeah, I buy it in the health food store. It's excellent. Anyway, you just gently glide the soap. Now I'm not pushing it. If I were to push it, the whole thing would ruche. I just want to make sure that there's soap all over the work. So I'm just really, really gently gliding the soap around, taking care not to disturb the fibres underneath. All the way along. Remember, we've got this plastic membrane which is stopping the water going anywhere. So I'm just sliding the soap over everything. Don't worry too much if the edges don't need to be particularly wet, but you do need to make sure you've got lots of soap. And if you find that the net here is very creased, once it's wet, you can gently lift it very, very carefully and then wet out. Now I'm going to put this on time lapse again, because you're going to have to do this process for a good half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour. So I'm going to do a little time lapse video of me doing it for a few minutes. Okay, so what we need to be looking for now, you can see that I've rubbed it probably for about half an hour. I've pressed down really hard on the lumpy yarn bits, and I've rubbed and rubbed and rubbed. Watch your lower back, ladies, when you're rubbing, or gents, I shouldn't be sexist. Watch your lower back. When I'm rubbing, I sit down with my tummy pressed up against the table and keep my back straight, and that stops me from getting either a bad back or bad shoulders, because I hear a lot of felt makers saying that they can't do it anymore because they get bad shoulders or bad back. But believe you me, if you keep your back straight, you're going to be fine. Sorry about the noise in the background. I've got my daughter over there who's dropping stuff. No, Poppy. I don't want to see that. The mess in my kitchen. Yes, I'm just like everybody else with a big mess in the kitchen when you're a crafter. But hey ho. Back to the felting. Now when we come to the next stage, the rolling stage, we're going to start to shrink these fibres. So at the moment we're going to check and just see if they've matted together. So let's have a look, Poppy. I'm going to lift this very, very gently, like so. And as you lift it, you might find, if you come in close, Poppy, can you see that the fibres are connecting to here? So keep your hand on your work and just lift gently. What you don't want to do is lift all of those really fine fibres off. And then you look at your work. You can see closely, if I pinch it, it should come up as one piece of material. Can you see that? It's almost like one piece. Just flatten it back down again. Rub it. And I'm going to lay the mat on here now, because I think I'm ready. It feels like there's one homogeneous piece of material underneath, rather than fibres that are slipping and moving all over the place. You can tell when it's not ready, because the fibres move too much. And in fact, if I do that there, some of these fibres maybe are still a little bit loose. So just making sure, taking care, making sure, rub a bit harder. You can be quite vigorous once you feel that it's all down quite well, and really press hard on these lumpier bits and just keep rubbing. Rub, rub, rub all the way around. And then when we come to the rolling stage, normally when I'm felt making, I use these bamboo mats. Can you see that, Poppy? I use these bamboo mats, but in this case, I've got this underfloor webby stuff that you put down to stop rugs slipping, or you put it in your drawers in your kitchen to stop things slipping off. So I've got a few lengths of this, and the reason I use this rather than bamboo is if I open up the bamboo, can you see these edges here? These would just poke through the net, and you don't want to do that because it might disturb your silk and ruin it. So just spread it down over the top. And you can see that the water is now flowing out quite a lot. And I'm going to use 2 of these mats. Just dangle it over the table. And then remember, we haven't done the other end yet. So starting at this end, I'm going to very gently and carefully lift up the plastic paper. Do you remember I had those ends? Can you see those? I had these ends. You need to make sure that they're well and truly secure. And very, very carefully, you're going to roll the tightest package you possibly can. One lady from America that I was teaching, she said it was like a giant burrito. I think that's a great analogy. So making sure this stays flat. Can you see when I'm rolling that? I've got the plastic, I've got the mat. Each time I roll it's getting a bit crinkly, so just straightening it out. You see all the water that's coming off. You might want a bird's eye view of that, I'm not sure. I love these colours, you'd never guess, would you? I mean later if I show you my kitchen, not now because it's a mess, but if I showed you my kitchen it's the same colour. So I'm just going to roll it up to the very end there. And then when I get to the end, I'm just going to pull it onto the table like so, lift up the mat, lift up the netting, and you can go down and look quite closely. You can see that here I've got the fibres. You can barely see them but they're there, and here they're not there. So on this end, I'm just going to cut my length of yarn and lay out some more fibres. Just take up the yarn. I'm just going to do it in real time just to remind you how to lay those fibres in case you forget. So once again, in the same manner, I'm just going to lay them out. You can overlap if you like on the yarn. And then I'm going to finish it in a time lapse. See you in a moment. Here I am again laying the frongs, and I've left some of the silk kind of, it's wet and it makes these lovely kind of ends, and I just leave them like that because they drape really well. And I'm just separating some of my, can you hear my daughter shouting in the background? Goodness knows who she's shouting to, but I'm not answering her for once. So I'm just laying out these lovely luscious curls, which again are hand dyed. I'm looking forward to the sunshine coming back to Britain, because then I can start laying out my Wensleydale fibres and dyeing them again, because they're just so beautiful. Look at that, that is just going to be beautiful dangling like that. Oops, there's even a bit of straw in that one. Have one there. What tends to happen with these fibres is on the bushy end, that felts in really well, and if you be careful you can keep that end curly like that. But just to make sure that they've definitely caught, what I do is I take a little bit of fibre and I just kind of pass it across like that, just to make sure, not too much, you don't want to not be able to see what's underneath it, but just to make sure that it has caught. And also if you come in close and see the layers of the green on top of the pink, it just looks beautiful, which reminds me I haven't got any purple in there. You want the scarf to look pretty homogeneous. One thing I've done differently here is I've laid the yarn down first. That'll have a different effect to what it looks like higher up the scarf, but it's all good. you'll be able to, I'm trying not to lay on top of the silk because you don't want to waste the silk fibres putting them underneath, because A, they're much more expensive than the wool, and they also add lustre, which you can only see when you've got your, I forgot what I was going to say because Poppy was lip reading to me. You only want to be able to see those silk fibres on the top. That's where they'll have the best effect. Making sure as well that you don't put your fibres all in the same direction. Some vertical, some horizontal, so that it's shrinking in every direction. And again, remember how fine I'm laying down here. Can you see that? Doing a great job doing the camera work there, Poppy. Got a steady hand for an 11-year-old. Thank you very much, darling. So I think I'm about ready to lay my netting down again. Okay, so I've rubbed this now again for 20 minutes, half an hour, making sure that everything is well and truly stuck down. And again, you can check that by just very, very gently rolling back the mat. Remember that this net begins to stick, so you have to hold on to your work and pull the net away. And if you look closely, if I go like this, it comes up as one, so we're ready to roll, making sure that all those ends are okay. So cover up with your netting, lay down your piece of mat and continue to roll to the very end. And then when you've got to the very end, like so, take your towel, lay it across the table, place your textile burrito, if you want to call it, in the end of the towel, and as tightly as you possibly can, roll into the towel. Now, different felters do this in different ways. Some people I've seen, they go all the way to the end and they tie bundles. But I prefer just to roll it halfway into the towel, leaving that gap, and then using my body weight and paying a lot of attention to how I'm stood. I've actually got a straight back, my legs are separated out, and I'm keeping my back straight with pressure going back and forth from the middle to the outside, like so. Or you can take a masseuse pose, one leg bent forward, one leg straight behind, but both ways I'm making sure that my back is straight, because doing this over a period of time will give you a really, really bad back. So just be careful. And I think Charlie is still nicely chilled behind me. He's enjoying this lockdown with all the company, everybody at home and endless dog walks. Great fun. Anyway, I hope you're all keeping well whilst we're making these things and we're at home together. So the whole rolling process is going to take me a good 15-20 minutes depending on how much pressure you use. And the thing is, you can never specify roll for 200 times or for 20 minutes because the variables change too much. Some people roll heavier handed than others, some people have more soap on than others, lots of different variables. Anyway, whilst I'm doing this, I'm just going to tell you one or two quick things. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you for joining me on this online course, and also I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. So I've been a felt artist now for about 15 years. I've got a website, deborahestherhusen.com, and on there, it's quite an old website, and I've realised now looking at it I really do need to update it, but on there you can see the artwork that I produce. And more latterly, I've been running retreats to beautiful places, one of which is in the Alps, absolutely stunning. I just love taking people there. We go to a gorgeous house, a gorgeous place that's 2,500 metres high, and every day in 6 different workshops over the week we make scarves, felt art, bags, slippers, jewellery, and we just basically have a beautiful time with like-minded souls, beautiful chef. There's also a gorgeous hot tub outside underneath Mont Blanc, so have a look at my website, you can see that for details. I should have been going next month, so sadly we've had to cancel, but in the future they'll be running again. And the other beautiful place I take people is to the Isle of Coll, which is also stunningly beautiful, with beaches and the Hebrides. And I also have an Etsy shop, which is WILDABANDON Felt. And you can see my hand-dyed wools and hand-dyed silks in my Etsy shop, and I'll leave the links at the bottom. Okay. And the last thing I just want to mention is I used to be a psychologist, and one thing I always loved doing was my artwork. And so I was lucky enough to be able to change my life in my 40s. And I was able to be at home more, and I set up my own art practice really, and I had a studio, and I've run lots and lots of courses over the years, and when I reckoned it up the other week, I've actually taught over about 2,500 people, so a lot of people to felt. So I've got a lot of history behind my felt making. But the thing more latterly as well that I've learned is, for many years I taught mindfulness and meditation, and felt making is so therapeutic, and that is one of the reasons that I think it's more important that today, particularly in our times of fear, that we do some crafting, because it completely engages you in the here and now. It's so good for your mental health. It's also quite good for your physical health, because believe you me, it's quite strenuous doing this. Anyway, enough about me, let's have a look at this work. I'm going to open it up and see how we're getting on. So as we open it up, you can remove the towel for a moment. Open up carefully. One thing we're going to have to check on periodically is that the netting hasn't stuck to the fibres completely. So be careful as you lift it, because you will find that it has stuck a little bit. And in fact, like me, you may have to rip the netting off. Now don't worry, it won't ruin your work, but you will have to be careful. So I hold on to the work. Can you see how the net lifts the fibres? Just hold on to it as you lift it. And go all the way. You can hear it actually tearing. It's not tearing, don't worry, there are no holes. But I'm actually physically pulling it hard as if I am ripping it, whilst holding on to it at the same time. I mean, if you look here, you can see it's not really pulling off too many fibres, just the odd one. And the thing is, if you do this too soon, you will lift all the fibres. Leave it too late, and it begins to amalgamate, so do take care on that. So that bit's okay. Whoops. Anything comes off like that, just lay it back down, and I'm just going to lay the netting across again, and we'll open the rest and do the same thing. The middle section, remember, as you lift it, you're lifting all the fibres. That there is just old felt on the net, it's not new fibres. I hope you can hear the birds in the background, it's so lovely to hear them. I do feel for those of you who are not in the countryside. We're so lucky to live in the countryside, and I do appreciate that not everybody gets the sounds of nature, so I do hope you're enjoying that. My daughter just pointed out as well, I've worked a lot in schools, teaching many schools across the north of England the art of felt making, and we've done wonderfully big panels where the whole school takes part. I've really enjoyed doing those. And again, once you've learnt to felt make, if you're a teacher, that's something that you could do with your children. Now at this moment, I'm just going to put this back to this end, and I'm going to start rolling from this end so that I can get to there and lift the net off. So remember, fold it over, and as tightly as you possibly can, roll your burrito. I think it's funny calling it a burrito. I love that. So we get to here, move it up the table, open it out, and then from this end we can do the same thing with the netting. Lift up, check, And be careful when you pull it off the fronds, because it's so fragile at the middle stage that you don't want to remove the fronds completely. And again, can you hear it ripping? In fact, this might be a little bit too stuck, but you can never not get it off. There has been occasion where I've really had to pull it really hard, and as long as you hold on to your scarf, you can do that. You'll just rip it off like that. And amazingly, the silk is very strong. I mean, it's, isn't it one of the strongest materials in the world? If I remember rightly, or am I getting mixed up with spider web? Oh yeah, spider web is the strongest material in the world, stronger than steel. Okay, so I pulled it back to here. Now, again, being careful that it's not going to rip off, so I'm holding my work as I pull it. And then go back to where I was, which is there, and then simply making sure that your work is straight. Lay the netting out, smoothing over. If you find it getting dry, particularly if you're in a hot country, this process can dry out very quickly. So if this suddenly had become very dry, you might want to add just a touch more soap and water, because if you don't add the soap and water and it's dry, it won't felt as well. So just quickly, a little bit of dampening, that's plenty, and soaping again. It was just a bit dry in that area. That's more than enough. It's nice and wet at this area. The soap's all still there. And we'll just carry on as before. So I'm going to speed it up again whilst I just do this bit. I've been rolling now for about 20 minutes, and if it gets slack, the burrito, you just open it up out again and make it tight again. I've probably done that twice because you can see it's getting a bit slack, but that's no problem. So I've rubbed it and rubbed it and rubbed it all the time, making sure that my back is straight. And that's imperative that you remember that, because I really don't want you to have a bad back. And I've got my feet in the masseuse pose. And I reckon now I'm going to check it, because it should be time to see if we're going to get to the final stage where we shrink it. So one wet towel, let's open it up. So if you come in close there, Poppy, and have a good look, you can see that that's well and truly felted down. Got a bit of a rogue fibre there. I'm just going to pull that away. Yeah, you can see that is definitely one piece of material. And if you have a look over the other side, it's very difficult to see this, but they call it angel hair. And if you give a little rub, you should be able to see the fibres ever so slightly. Can you see that?
Yeah.
There's not many, but just a few. You need to know you've got a few, then we can start to shrink it. So I think you can see as well that that's well and truly laid down. And now I'm going to go all the way along and just pull this off and check that it's all nicely felted as one. And if some bits are moving, oh, that's moving still a bit, and I'd be inclined to just stop and just to roll it for another 5 minutes, because you don't want to wreck it. So I'll just get back to rolling it for another 5 minutes and leave you there. So here we are again. So I've just rolled it for another 5 minutes, and you can see it's made a difference. Where it wasn't stuck down, it's now stuck down. So I'm just going to go all the way along, pulling carefully the netting away. I noticed there that's a little bit loose, and you will have some discrepancies. There will be places where it's a little bit loose. Sorry about the noise in the background, my family. Anyway, so I'm just pulling the netting off as carefully as I can, holding on to the work and pulling away the mat. Now you'll see that some of this margolin silk, if you look in closely there, It almost looks like it's got holes, but that's the nature of this silk. It's very gauze-like, and it almost adds to the effect. You get these beautiful kind of transparencies. Some little blobs there that shouldn't be there, which are just off my net. And again, just carefully pull it off, like so. Just pull it along, holding on to the work, ripping it off. It's coming off quite quickly, which is good. Getting rid of the mats, getting rid of the nets. There's a lovely soggy pool under the table. So when you do this, guys, make sure that you're on a stone floor. Don't think you need to look at the mess. Make sure that you're on a stone floor, or put down towels, plenty of towels. I mean, I have done this in my living room before I had a studio, and I used to just have lots of towels down on the carpet so that it didn't go through to the carpet. But you can rest assured you will have a little bit of drippage. So I'm pulling off the last bit there. There's a little bit of hay from the fibre stuck in my work. Just pull that off. And then now we've got one piece of fabric, and I'm going to take away plastic. And now we come to the fulling process where we're going to shrink it. So here I've got a very, very hot basin of water. I'm going to put it in. There's a little bit of the blue dye coming out there. You can never be completely sure when you're buying hand dyed wools that it won't be completely fast. But what I have got is a cup of white vinegar, which I'm going to put in the final rinse just to make sure we don't lose any more colour. So it's almost a bit like making bread. You're kind of massaging it. Bring it out onto the table, and then we're going to open it up with the silk side up and the fibre side down. You can see already it's starting to crinkle, and that's the effect we're looking for. So with the fibre side down, open it a little bit to make sure your sides haven't completely stuck together. You can kind of run your finger gently, but before we start doing that, more soap because some of it's lost in the water. And we're just massaging it as if it's bread. Do that for a few minutes and then sort of open it up again, because you don't want to massage it into itself. And be aware that this bit goes very quickly. And you can see one or two little, can you see the holes in there? That's again the nature of the Margland silk. It almost goes like cobweb felt, we call it, which is the beauty of this fibre. It's strong. Don't worry about it being too fine. It is strong. And I just want to keep doing that. Just want a little bit more heat. I'm just going to go to my kettle. This is not freshly boiled, but it is still quite warm. So be careful, guys. Don't pour boiling water onto your work. But we do need heat. Oh yeah, that's better. I feel the heat under my fingers. And then we can also do the whole sploshing, throwing down. This is very good for lifting up fibres on your work to make them shrink more, but also to make them lift a little bit. Not enough that they come off, but the end here is perhaps a little bit heavier than you might like, so you can always cut things off at the end if you don't want those heavy ones hanging. Just be careful of your edges. And we can also shrink it a bit that way. You can check on your shrinkage by opening it up, because remember, this went over the table, whereas now I think it's as long as the table, so it shrunk a fair amount. Can you see that? It's now as long as the table, so it shrunk probably about 20% at the moment, so we can shrink it some more. I'm just going to do it a little bit more that way, and also the shrinkage will keep it, make it strong. A little more heat. sorry Poppy. I'm scratching my little girl, she's not impressed. Throw it. But do be careful that you don't go OTT at this point, because it could shrink really, really small and you don't want to overdo it. How are we getting on? Check the shrinkage. The only thing about the way I just did it then, you don't really have much control of the direction of the shrinkage. Again, look how much it's shrunk. So I just want a little bit more. And you don't want to shrink it too much, otherwise you won't have a good drape. Let's get some hot water in it. Another little bit of heat. And remember, only put the heat on at the end, because if you heat at the beginning, you won't get those fibres passing through the silk. I think Charlie's disappeared, he got bored, so I'm just taking him for a walk. Okay. Right, so I've nearly finished with the shrinkage. When you've decided how small you want this scarf, check it on the length of the table. You don't want it too small, remember. You need to be able to have a good, I want to be able to go around my neck kind of twice, so it's going to look like that. But at this point, I'm just going to take it over to the sink, which in this case is here, and I'm just going to literally rinse it in warm water, and in the final rinse, in a bowl this big, I'm going to add half a cup of water to the final rinse. Stop. So I'm just doing the final rinse actually under running water, but do be careful when you do this, because you don't want to wash away any of your pieces. And then with the final bowl of water, add in half a cup of vinegar. I'm sorry, before I said half a cup of water, but I meant half a cup of vinegar. And when it runs dry and there's no more suds, then, you see I'm being quite rough, then you're done. Okay, so it doesn't look much right now, it's still damp. I'm going to open it up. It's shrunk considerably, and we've got these gorgeous kind of frilly edges. And we've got these amazing fronds, as I like to call them, with the hand-dyed, hand-spun wool, and the edges where the lovely silk has rolled. You don't have to sew the edges, by the way, because these are selvage edges on the lengths, so they roll themselves and you get the deeper colour. And you just need to tease it open a little bit. Sometimes it shrinks on itself and you just have to kind of tease it apart, and whilst it's wet you can shape it into whatever shape you want. So if you feel that you've shrunk it too much, at this point you can stretch it. And at this end it looks really lovely, because we've got this lovely corner, which I'm not going to unfurl. Can you see that? I'm not going to unfurl it quite like that. We'll just have these edges, make sure they haven't felted too much into the work. And you can see all the way along we've got these lovely margolin silk cobwebby effects. Can you see that? So there you are, guys. We are in the garden with the last bit of sunshine of the day and just leaving it there to dry. Stop. Hi guys, well here I am with the finished product. I'm really quite pleased with it. It's my felted Nuno scarf on Magolin silk from Uzbekistan, a rarefied gauze, and if we look closely you can see it's gone almost like cobweb. Can you see there? It's so beautiful. And if we turn it over, look at the sheen and the way it's all crinkled. So silk itself doesn't actually felt. It's the fibres that reach up, trap it and turn it into Nuno Felt. And there you go, my beautiful Nuno Felt Scarf.